Hi, my name is Beth Azor, and I own shopping centers in South Florida. And this is my podcast, I Own a Shopping Center, Now What? So I just got a tweet, a DM from Twitter, and the person said, "Hey Beth, I'm negotiating with a local franchise." So it's a franchise concept, but it's the person's first franchise unit. So AKA, that's a mom and pop, ladies and gentlemen, mom and pop. And they're asking me for $30,000 of TI, tenant improvement money. Is it okay that I ask them for financials? And I wrote back, 1,000,000% is it okay for you to ask for financials? And I listed everything that he or she should ask this prospective tenant. So I'm going to share those with you if I have not already on this podcast. So credit check. I do a credit check on every potential tenant and their spouse. I just had the situation this weekend. I showed space to a hair salon and they said, "We're ready to move forward. What do we need to do?" And I said, "Well, you need to fill out my application. I need to pull a credit check on you and your husband." Why my husband? Because in the state of Florida, and you guys should check this in your own states, if they sign a lease in an LLC and then they sign a guarantee with just Beth Azor and they don't have husband Azor on it, then it is not a valid guarantee. Basically, one spouse could put everything else in the other spouse's, name. And then when you go to, God forbid, sue them for 3 years of rent, you're shit out of luck. So so the first thing I do is say, and I told this gentleman to get a credit check with the spouse. Now, what I did say to my prospect from this weekend, the hair salon, I said, you can avoid the personal guarantee, which, that's what we started talking about, if you want to give me 6 months security up front. And in my case, the tenant is taking the space as is. In the case of the DM on Twitter, they're asking for $30,000, and I believe it was a yogurt shop. So let's assume it's 1,000 square feet. So $30 a square foot in TI. First of all, I'm allergic to TI, especially for a startup mom and pop, and of course, what the franchisor says, well, we're the franchisor and we have, 1,500 locations, but they're not signing on the lease, right? And even the tenant, well, this is a franchisee I'm, buying into. Yes, they're paying $80,000 or whatever to buy the franchise concept. So all their cash is going to pay the franchise fee, right? And they want the landlord to put in the TI, and then they get to open. And then what happens if they, have problems and the sales don't match what the franchisor said they're supposed to be making? Do you think the franchisor comes back in and helps that franchisee? No. You know what the franchisor says? Call your landlord and see if you can get some rental abatement. That's how that works. Trust me, I've been doing this 39 years. So in fact, the franchisor doesn't really care if the franchisee fails, because then they get to come in and sell that space to another franchisee and collect another franchise fee. So they're not your partner, that franchisor. So you need to treat that franchisee, especially the first location of one, as a complete mom and pop. So back to the question at hand. Yes, you are to get a personal financial statement. DM me or email me. I've offered this before. I have 2 different application forms. One is for an existing business and one is for a startup. So on that application, they sign with their Social Security and their approval for me to pull the credit. I believe we use Equifax. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think that's what we use. And if my center is 95% leased, I'm looking for 1 credit score. If I have a property, which I do in Cleveland, that is 60% occupied, I'm looking for a different credit score. So, you have to make that decision on what you're willing to do. If I have a tenant that I'm willing to do business with, maybe they have another location, but their credit score is low, I go back to the security deposit and ask for additional security deposits. So once the credit check is, they don't have a problem with that, and I get that, and let's say it comes in good for them and their spouse, then what the remaining information on the application is, I ask them how much cash they have, and I ask them how much debt they have. So when they put things like, they have $10,000 of cash and $30,000 of credit card debt, that's a red flag. Again, probably don't move forward if my center is 90% occupied or more. Also, back to the credit check, if they have a low credit score and they can point to 2 years ago when they had medical issues, then, certainly there are things that can be considered, right? Or if they were in business with someone and there was divorce of the business partnership. So I'm not saying just point blank, you're out, but if it's just unpaid bills that's causing it, then that's a problem. So I want to see how much cash they have. I want them to write down the number. It's on a form I have. And then I ask for the bank statements. 9 times out of 10, the bank statements don't jive with the number that they've said. So now that becomes a trust issue. So they say I have $40,000 in cash and the bank statement shows $6,000. And then another part of the application, it says startup costs. And then let's say they say it's going to cost me $50,000 to start up. So they have $30,000. They say they have $30,000 cash. They show me $6,000 in a bank account and it's $50,000 to open. So that phone call goes like this. Hi, I see that it's going to cost you $50,000 to open. Your bank statements show 6. You mentioned that you had 30. Is there another bank statement that maybe you forgot to send to me? I don't accuse them of out and out lying to me. I just try to get to the bottom of what's going on. I think that there are a few landlords out there that don't check. They get the package and they put a check mark that they received it. But I don't think there's not a lot of people that delve into the package and the application and then call with questions, because when you have to call the prospect with questions, it's difficult. And a lot of people like to avoid that. So, but the startup cost is very important and absolutely connects back to cash at hand. So a lot of times when I call them out on this, they say, oh, well, I'm getting an SBA loan, or, oh, I'm my partner, I have a partner. So we delve into that also as well. If there's stocks and bonds listed on the financial statement, I have $150,000 in stocks and bonds. I want that Merrill Lynch statement that shows that. Absolutely. I also ask if it's an existing business or if maybe they're opening a yogurt store, but they own, let's say, a UPS store. I want the landlord reference on the business. Or maybe they have a warehouse. If they rent from anyone, I want a landlord reference. And we call and we check up on that and see if they pay rent on time, because that's crucially important to me. And then if they're a startup, I ask for a very brief business plan. It's 1 page. It's basically how much income you're going to make. If it's a restaurant, how many lunches, how many dinners, how many turns, how many breakfasts, what your cost of goods are. And then what are your expenses? What did they put in for rent? Do they put something in for insurance? Do they put something in for PR? Do they put something in for salary? So I want to see, do they put something in for utilities, for Wi-Fi, like all these expenses? I want to see that they thought that out and if they're going to make money. So those are the things that I look for. And something else, a lot of times our third-party brokers, as much as we love them, what they say is the tenant won't fill out the credit package until you approve the deal. Well, that's the most ludicrous thing I've ever heard. How am I going to approve the deal if I don't know if they are worthy enough for me to agree to do a deal with? So that's just ludicrous. Don't let your third-party broker give you that. Say, okay, if they don't want to give me the credit until I approve the deal, here's the deal. I quoted you 40. That's what it's going to be. It's 40. It's not the 32 that they want. And I told you no TI. And that's how the deal gets approved. It's at 40 with no TI. Now, if they want me to consider their offer of 32 in rent and $50 a square foot in TI, I need to see the information about them, right? So that's how they can get a better deal than what I've already quoted. So I hope this helped. If you have any questions, DM me. If you like the podcast, share it, subscribe, and all that jazz. Have a great week.